Man, oh man, where do we go from here?
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Hey, before we get started, I need to shout out you as a community. From my everydayers to people joining and listening, we have reached 500 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much. We're just getting started. We are just about a month old on this brand new adventure here at Locked On Kansas State, and we have already reached that milestone. I am super excited to see what is next down the line for us here, and I can't wait to see what we get and how fast we get to 1,000, because at this pace, we are cooking. We are absolutely crushing the numbers. Plenty to be excited about. We have lots of momentum. We're like the Kansas State football team, plenty of momentum here. This show's not about the Kansas State football team, unfortunately, and this one isn't about a lot of momentum in a good way. This is the complete opposite in this case. We're talking about the men's basketball squad to start off this show. We're going to end on a good note because there is a bright side when it comes to K-State athletics right now. But first, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is a 30-point blowout from the Houston Cougars in Manhattan against Kansas State over the weekend, 87-57. Now, don't get me wrong, Houston is a very good basketball team, and Coach Tang will tell you that. And we're going to talk about what he had in comments in the postgame. But overall, they lost 87-57. Houston moves to 12-3 on the season, and unfortunately for Kansas State, they moved to 7-8. They have a sub-500 record now. This is the fifth largest loss at home in the history of K-State basketball. If you thought that this team, and myself included, if you go back to some of my past basketball shows, some of my New Year's resolution shows, if you go back to some of these, I will be right in this same conversation. If you thought this team was going to have what it takes to bounce back from this non-conference blunder of a record, going 6-5 in non-conference, losing to teams like Drake and Wichita State and St. John's, and bounce back, especially after that Big 12 opener, right? Especially after that exciting Big 12 opener against ranked Cincinnati, where you get the win. You give Jerome Tang his 3-0 start again in Big 10 openers, if you will. And then you just completely, I don't even know. You're going to have to change the sheets now because you crapped the bed in the last 3 games in the Big 12. Now, this one's kind of expected, especially after what we saw in the games from Oklahoma State and TCU on the road. But there was a little bit of hope, a little bit of glimmer in my eye, if you will, going into this one. And we did a crossover at the beginning of the week with Locked On Houston's Parker Ainsworth, and I talked about I didn't really think Kansas State could win this basketball game, but I thought it would be close. And the reasons I said it thought it'd be close is because they were playing at home. It's a completely different environment when they're playing at home, and they've proved that in the Tang era. They're 10-2 before this game against ranked opponents in Manhattan. Well, that obviously wasn't the case in this game. Houston was just absolutely dominant across the entire spectrum, every facet of the game. They outmatched Kansas State. The biggest thing was they out-rebounded them. That was a huge issue, a huge concern for Kansas State. Reboundings were a big issue. They lost the rebounding battle 44-20. I mean, how can you just can't get anything going if you lose that by a differential of more than 20. They doubled you and then some on the rebounding game. Kansas State only had 2, and this isn't a typo, 2 offensive rebounds the entire game. That takes away your second chance points. And we're not talking about them having the best shot selection anyways. We know that's been an issue all season long. There were some bright spots in the Cincinnati game, and I don't know where they went. You might have noticed that the tone of my ways of thinking about this basketball team has changed if you've listened to my past basketball episodes, because it has. Because I don't know the right direction for this ball club. I don't know where they should go. And what is it what should we consider a successful season now? Because it seems all in likelihood that the NCAA tournament's out of the question. I mean, you're 1-4 in conference play right now. 1-3 in conference play. And some of those losses are some pretty bad losses. Oklahoma State, TCU, those are the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the Big 12 conference at the moment, for the most part. It doesn't get any easier from here, folks. So what are we to do in thinking about what is a successful season? And is going back to the NIT considered a good one after what we've spent, what this community, what this campus, what this college has spent in the NIL to bring in this kind of squad, to let players move on that are absolutely crushing it, by the way, like Kaluma in Texas? Are we considering right now a successful season? I think there's no chance that we can even call it that unless you find a way to get to the NCAA tournament. And I feel like that's almost impossible right now. I feel like if you went to FanDuel, our buddies at FanDuel, and we looked at the odds, it would probably be very close to probably 10,000 odds. And I don't know. If you do know, check it out. I don't have FanDuel up, but that's just me probably being a little over dramatic. Regardless, this was a really rough game to watch. They didn't show any fire. They didn't show much motivation. And whatever this buy-in that Coach Tang has been trying to look for from this team, I think he's still searching. Because it's very hard to think that this team right now has any sort of buy-in after falling 3 games. Now, there's a couple things that a plus side, like Brandon Hausen was incredible. He was 5 for 11 from the field, all those from 3-point land, finished with 15 points. Now, the fact that he had 11 shots, 11 attempts was exactly what you needed. He needs to shoot way more and way more often. And you finally got that. Now, I just wish everybody else would have stepped up to that type of play as well. And he was really the only one that did so from beyond 3-point line. He had half of the threes, which is normal in a Kansas State kind of aspect in this season. And I wish he would have even shot even more. I wish he would have shot 16 or 17 shots in this case, because overall they shot 40% from the field, and he was shooting, just under 50% from 3-point land. So he was right on par with everybody else. They should have kept giving him the rock. He would have started to light up at least eventually. There was just a really tough time from them having I go back to the rebounds, because the rebounding was just really challenging for Kansas State. And you can't win a basketball game if you lose multiple other facets of the game, especially in rebounding, because it just takes away so many other opportunities for you. Now, one plus side, other than Hausen, is that Kansas State scored at least more than 55 points. That's something that opponents have had a hard time doing against Houston. Now it's 57, so take it as you will, right? But they just couldn't get anything going. And not only did they not have rebounds that didn't involve second chance points, that didn't involve aggressive plays down towards the boards, that aggressive point led to no free throws as well. That's a huge problem for Kansas State. That continues to be an issue. They can't get to the line. And when they do get to the line, they're not efficient. Again, they were 64% from the field, or from the free throw line in this one, 9 from 14 from the charity strike. That's more than they've had in the past. That's still not good enough for a Division I basketball team, for a Power 4 conference basketball team. You can't be averaging under 60% on the season in free throws, and I feel like that's where they're at right now. I have plenty more to talk about on this one. I'm going to try and find some bright notes, because there are some bright sides when it comes to Kansas State athletics. Stick with me on this show. I know it's a little bit of rambling, a little bit of just off tangent thoughts, but I had to get this one off my chest. I don't know where we go if you're Kansas State right now for the rest of the season, for the men's side of things. And we're going to try and make sense of it, especially when we start talking about what Coach Tang's comments had after the game. Is there even a way to make sense of it? We'll try right here on Locked On Kansas State. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were ever going to get the money back. Now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched your unique tax situation. an expert who's backed by the latest technology with cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates of their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. All while you go about your day, no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is taxes. Intuo TurboTax. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Welcome on back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. Hey, for your second listen today, I always got to tell you, check out Locked On Big 12. They always got everything you need in this conference. And if you're looking for some more basketball talk across the conference, in the toughest basketball conference of the league, and unfortunately we're at the bottom of that conference right now, you go ahead and give Drake Toll a listen because he's absolutely crushing it over there. There's some really good basketball going on right now. And I hate to give them their flowers because this is a Kansas State podcast, but man, do Iowa State look good. Man, does that team look good. I feel like they can go all the way. And we might have it when it's all said and done. When we have the March Madness all set up, and we have probably 7 or 8 teams in the Big 12, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be one of ours. I think a team like the Cyclones could do it. But maybe we can be spoiler down the road. Who knows? I want to talk about some things about what Coach Tang said after the conversation, after the game this last weekend against Houston, in a 30-point loss. I want to talk about what we should think about moving forward, look at the schedule, and try to be optimistic about it. And then we'll end this show with some bright notes, because I do have some bright notes about what us as fans should be putting our focus on and where our efforts should go. And I think it's about time that we finally have that conversation. But first, Coach Tang, I think the first thing that stuck out to me before anything, and this is probably something that will be addressed and will be looked at for a very long time, is that Buddy Rich didn't play in this game. And there was a lot of question marks to why he wouldn't play. Now, when he's came off the bench over the last couple games, he's been pretty dang good. And when asked about it after the game, all he said was, "I'm not going to answer that question." Now, this is where I have an issue to what really matters most for this program. And this is where I question, is winning the most important thing for Coach Tang and his coaching staff? We've seen this drama, if you will, unfold with Doug McDaniel at the beginning of the season, where he sat on the bench sometimes, he didn't start. And then when he finally did start, it was a big fiasco at the press conference to why Coach Tang finally made the decision. It wasn't his decision, but it was a holy decision. It was a bigger power in his mind that why he decided to start Doug McDaniel. He couldn't make that decision himself, or at least fully give the responsibility to himself on the why he was going to make the change to start Doug McDaniel, arguably the best guard that has been on this team all season long. Now, in this game, he didn't play very well. 35 minutes played. He only had 5 points. He was 1 for 8 from the field. But where else are you going to go with the guard game? Now, playing Buddy Rich would have helped that, but he didn't play in this game against Houston. I'm guessing it's some sort of disciplinary reason, since you didn't answer that, because that was kind of the same route that the McDaniel route took earlier in the year. And if so, what are we doing? What are we doing right now? We are at the cusp of the season. We are, dare I say, past the breaking point of either making the tournament or hopefully finding a bid for the NIT, if you even want to accept that, which I'm guessing, by the way, if we make the NIT and you have these type of NIL players who are being paid to play and they don't make the tournament, are probably going to opt out of the NIT. Why wouldn't they? Right? I heard somebody call them on social media mercenaries. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. It didn't sound, I really couldn't disagree with them. Really couldn't disagree. So either way. But the Buddy Rich situation to me is very interesting. I want to see what happens moving forward with him. They already dismissed a Chor from the team earlier this year, the Doug McDaniel situation, and now a Buddy Rich situation. There always seems to be an internal issue with this basketball team when it comes to Jerome Tang over the last couple seasons. And in those last couple seasons where we have had internal issues are the seasons where we did not make the Elite Eight, where we did not make the NCAA tournament. All that momentum seems to be long gone and far in the past. Got to find a way to get that back. One of the ways he talked about how possibly you could try and make it back was quote, how he feels his goals and how the team's goals should be moving forward. And he said, and I'm going quotes here, our goal is to get where we have multiple David Gassans in the program that are on the floor at the same time. We have to figure out how to get there in a day and age where kids are allowed to leave whenever they want to. This is a self-made problem. This is a self-made problem for Kansas State. You went out in the transfer portal because you thought that was the right decision to go after the players that you think have the proven talent and throw money at them and think that they are going to buy in to whatever culture you decide because you're paying them Benjamins. How can you think that that is the right move to make? Now, I'm all for NIL. I'm all for the transfer portal. I'm all for college players getting money. It's long overdue. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And if you're not, I'm sorry, but I am. However, I do not think in a coaching standpoint, in a program aspect side of things, that it should be your main focus any way, shape, or form, more leaning towards the transfer portal in my mind, when building a program. Your entire focus, your 80-20, if you will. I think Coach Kleiman's doing a great job on the football side doing this. Why is maybe Coach Tang needs to take something from his book? Maybe some of this collective money needs to shift a little towards the football side. Maybe. I think Coach Kleiman's doing a really good job doing this. He's building his team through the high school levels and then filling the voids, if you will. Replacing, maybe, filling a hole in a sock, taking care of the small things, the missing pieces, if you will, in the transfer portal. That is not what the basketball program is doing, at least on the men's side. That is not what is happening. If you look at the recruiting classes that the basketball team have for the next couple of years, there are not many people that are committed to Kansas State right now in the high school ranks. So unless they change their ways very quickly, and unless they shift their focus towards the recruiting trail, which it looks like this coaching staff is having a very hard time doing, then you're going to be back in the same exact boat this offseason after hopefully getting an NIT bid that you're probably going to opt out of. And then that pushes you back even farther, because what recruit is going to want to come to Kansas State if they know that they're going to probably be replaced by a player in the portal that is going to come in with no buy-in? They're in a very tough spot right now. They're in a very tough spot to be. And to be completely honest, I think the right way to go is to take a step back, look at what is working in other programs, and then attack. Because right now, it is not working the way that they want it to work. I think we've seen that for 2 years in a row. You moved on from some of your players that you shouldn't have moved on from this season. Now, some were chasing a bag, sure, fine. But you also paid players a bag, so you could have helped those players stick around. But if you want to change the way and have multiple David Gassans on your program, then you have to change the way that you are building this team. And right now, I don't see that changing. Not with this coaching staff. Not with this culture, this buy-in that they're trying to build. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the athletic director of Kansas State, for Jerome Tang and his staff. And I think somehow, some way, whether that is Jerome Tang or someone below him or in a different aspect of things, maybe a general manager needs to come in, I think there has to be some kind of changes when it comes to this program. After 2 unsuccessful seasons, when this team was expected to not only make the NCAA tournament, but go deep. And I know we're in January. I know we're in the middle of January, And I know it's still technically a possibility. I mean, Jerome Tang even said it a couple months ago in a press conference that one of his Baylor teams started conference play 2-8 and still made the tournament. It went to the Sweet 16. Well, their non-conference schedule was probably a lot better. And this team just doesn't have any buy-in or whatever that is. I hope it changes. I really hope it does. So moving forward, Kansas State team has really, they have a tough go. It doesn't get any easier. And one more thing before we change and talk about the schedule. We've discussed rebounds. We've discussed free throws. This is a very bad defensive team. And that's something that Tang's teams in the past over the last couple seasons never had an issue. Defensive efficiency is one of the worst. And I think it is the worst in the KenPom era for Kansas State. I think it's down to 102, 103 in defense efficiency. In the Tang era, I should have pulled this tab up, but they were close to top 25. I want to say it was top 30 over the last couple seasons when it came to defense. That's a huge jump. And this is the year where they wanted to buy reinforcements, if you will, to take this team to a new level. It's doing the complete opposite. Major things have to change with this program before next season tips off. And I hate that we're already at this conversation because we still have 16 more conference games to go before we hit the Big 12 tournament. Texas Tech is next on Tuesday. And then you go to Lawrence to take on number 9 Kansas. They're starting to figure it out as well. And you're on the road again. That currently ranked number 25 in the nation, Baylor. And then you come back home for West Virginia. Texas Tech is a good team. Kansas is a great team. Baylor is a great team. West Virginia, I think, is a very underrated team. And then you got Oklahoma State again, who made you look bad. And then Iowa State on the road. This is a tough stretch. And to be completely honest with you folks, if they went 0-6 in the next 6 games, would you be shocked? I don't know if I see another win in January. I don't know. It's going to be a really tough one. Even Jim Nantz, if you guys are watching the college football, or not college football playoffs, the NFL playoffs on Sunday, I think it was the Bills game, the Bills and Broncos. And Jim Nantz put up an advertisement for Saturday's game between Kansas State and Kansas. And even he knew what happened. He talked about the conversation of Kansas State. He said they hope to rebound after getting thumped by Houston over the weekend. Even Jim Nantz was throwing shade at the Wildcats. They can't even get a win in a commercial for the NFL playoffs. Tough one. Let's have a bright side here. Let's end the show with a bright side. Let's make sure we're on the right note as we head into the new week, because I got some fun news to announce to you about what's coming on tomorrow's episode. But first, let's talk about some bright news right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, attending the 12-team college football playoff games are an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games, and I can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. We're at the national championship now, Ohio State, Notre Dame. It's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to watch it. Good old Will Howard. I want to see him get a natty because he absolutely deserves it. Game Time has this new feature, though, called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State. The Kansas State basketball program is a mess. The men's team, that is. And that's where I want to shift my focus to. And I think that's where we, as a fan base, need to start shifting our focus to the bright side of things. And I'm sure that this is not going to come as a surprise to you. But the bright side of things is not with the men's squad. It is with the women's basketball program. They are absolutely crushing it. and they deserve way more attention, myself included. And I'm going to start doing that on this program moving forward. They are no longer going to be the third segment. They deserve their own segments. They deserve all that stuff. There's no doubt about that. So I hope you tag along and join for the ride here. But Kansas State 17-1 on the season. They're now ranked 11th in the nation, and which, may I say, is a complete catastrophe. Is an absolute, I mean, I keep using this word. I don't know what it means. Inconceivable, right? I'm really, and if you don't know Princess Bride, I really hope that you look that up and don't think I'm an idiot. Now, they just won against BYU 92-65. They have so many good players. This is the team that needs to be paid attention to, folks. This has, not only are they going to make the NCAA tournament, they have what it takes to make a deep run and potentially win it all in March. Here's a fun stat for you. Serena Sundell, currently the only player in women's college basketball with at least 5-point assist double-doubles. 5 of them. 5 double-doubles with points and assists on the season. She leads the nation in assists. Insane. And she's just one of the many stars on this team for Kansas State. They play a huge bench. They play about 10 players every game. And it feels like when they bring in any player, unlike the men's squad, they don't take a step back. It's more of a rotation than a bench. And that's really, really exciting. And I think there's plenty to be excited about for this Kansas State women's team. You start paying attention. They're 5-0 in the Big 12 Conference. Their only loss came to Duke. And yeah, there was a little bit of issues around that game, but I think if they played again right now, I think it'd be a different outcome. They're a different looking team right now. Tamara Pondexter, 24 points in the last game. Ayoka Lee, I mean, she's been absolutely incredible. She had 19 in the game against BYU. We talked about Sundell already. Jalen Glenn is great. She just hit, I think, a career 1,000 points the other day. I think we talked about that on the show. And Terrence Sides, she's really good off the bench, or when she does start, she bounces back and forth in the lineup. There's a lot of great things when it comes with this Kansas State women's squad. And we're going to start paying attention and talking to them more. They deserve their own shows. They deserve their own segments. You name it, it's happening right here on Locked On Kansas State. Next up for them, they take on Arizona at home, and they have Arizona State at home. There's 2 straight games at home, bringing in the Wildcats and the Sun Devils. I hope you guys fill the arena because it's absolutely needed, because this team deserves it. They don't play a ranked opponent until they take on TCU right before the Super Bowl on February 5th. And then they play Oklahoma State on the 8th. So 2 ranked games in a row. TCU is a good team, but they should not be ranked ahead of Kansas State. They shouldn't be. But if it takes until that game to figure it out, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat them by 30. This team is so good. And this is a team that I think is going to make the national championship and win it. And if you don't believe me, I wish I could show you my FanDuel account. I put them as my pick, my lock for win the women's national championship. I got them at plus 9,800, by the way, too. And I think those odds are still pretty decent because there's still plenty of basketball left. But regardless of how you feel about odds and our friends at FanDuel, all that good stuff like that, your focus should shift, I think. And if you want to have a little bit of good feelings to start the year off right? I mean, that's how I'm thinking. My New Year's resolutions, if you will, I'm trying my hardest to have a better positive outlook on life in 2025. I know there's lots of bad news going on with the wildfires, and every which way you turn on TV, there's bad news. If you're looking on ESPN, and unfortunately when you have your favorites as the men's basketball team for Kansas State, that's more bad news. If you want to have some good news, shift your focus to the women's team. Plenty of that. And plenty of momentum for the men's squad coming up on tomorrow's show. I got a special guest, and I hope you like him. I think you'll know him if you're familiar with Kansas State content over on YouTube and social media and all the podcast world. We'll have that stuff for you right here. But until then, please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.